Hello, boys and girls. Greg from the Scary Spirits podcast here to make you another cocktail. This week's cocktail is the Hpnotiq Margarita, and it is the featured cocktail in today's episode. We're going to start a shaker with ice. To that, we're going to add tequila, 1 1/2 ounces tequila, one of Karen's favorites. 1 1/2 ounces. Next, the recipe calls for 1 1/2 ounces of Hpnotiq liqueur, which is a blue liqueur. You can substitute blue curacao, so that's what I'm going to do. 1 1/2 ounces. Next, 3/4 ounces triple sec. I'm using Cointreau. 3/4 of an ounce. Not 1/2 ounce, not 1 ounce. 3/4. Next, 1/2 ounce sour mix. Half an ounce. Finally, 1/2 ounce pineapple juice. 1/2 ounce. Lots of vitamin C, once again, boys and girls. Very important. Then we shake. We take our margarita glass or rocks glass filled with ice and strain our cocktail. Ooh, it's a pretty blue, boys and girls. Garnish with a lime wheel, if you like. Yeah, pretty good. Not really a tequila fan, and you can definitely taste it. That's not bad. Yeah. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed the podcast. See ya.
Sometimes the casting director of a movie kills it and finds just the right actor for just the right part. And that is definitely the case in this week's episode of the Scary Spirits podcast, Shadow of the Vampire. Willem Dafoe and John Malkovich embody their characters wholeheartedly. So well, in fact, it's hard to decipher who is the actual villain in this story. You might automatically assume it's the Count. But can you really fault a vampire for being vampiric? Maybe, but there are certainly other evils in play here. How far would you go to create your masterpiece? Cheers.
Welcome to the Scary Spirits podcast. Please be advised that the presenters may use adult language and/or discuss adult situations. This podcast is not intended for younger listeners or those that may be easily offended. So, if you're ready, let's go.
Hi, I'm Greg.
Hey, I'm Karen.
And welcome to the Scary Spirits podcast, the podcast that combines the two very different yet highly compatible worlds of scary films and alcoholic spirits.
What could possibly go wrong?
Indeed. How are you, Karen?
I am feeling fantastic. How are you, Greg?
I'm good, Karen. Thank you for asking.
It's what we do.
Karen, I believe this film was your choice, was it? Was it not?
It was.
And what film have you chosen for us this week, Karen?
I have chosen the movie Shadow of the Vampire from the year 2000.
2000, the new millennium.
Yes, which seems just like yesterday, but was actually 23 years ago.
Remember Y2K panic, Karen?
Vaguely. I didn't believe in it. I probably should have done more to prepare, but I didn't do anything.
Working in the computer field, Karen, it was a big deal.
I'm sure.
But it turned out not to be anything too much. So,
well, you fixed it all for us. That's what you should say.
Well, yeah. Well, just doing my job, Karen.
You're not really a hero. Just doing what any computer guy would do.
Yep. That's all you can do. Any reason you chose this film other than it's a vampire film, Karen?
Well, it's a follow-up to my last film that I chose. I chose last time Nosferatu. And so this time I chose Shadow of the Vampire, which goes very well with Nosferatu.
Does it, Karen?
I think it does.
Do you have a cocktail for this film, Karen?
I do.
And what would that be?
Well, it's the Hpnotiq Margarita.
Oh, it's nothing like bloody or vampire-y.
No, I tried to be all creative because I was sure, because this is a vampire film, and even in Nosferatu, there is some hypnotic sequences, but not so much in this film. So this really doesn't have anything to do with it. It's really tasty, though. I like it.
I thought you might.
So I'm glad that I chose it, but it has nothing to do with the film.
How would one make one of these Hpnotiq margaritas, Karen?
Well, first you're going to gather your ingredients, which are 1.5 ounces of tequila, 1.5 ounces of Hpnotiq liqueur. And if you don't have that, you can use blue curacao, 3/4 ounce of triple sec, 1/2 ounce of sour mix, 1/2 ounce of pineapple juice, and a lime wheel for garnish if you want to be fancy pants. In a cocktail shaker, pour tequila, Hpnotiq, triple sec sour mix, and the pineapple juice. Fill it with ice. Shake well. Strain into a chilled margarita or large rocks glass filled with ice, and garnish with your fancy lime wheel if you have it.
Should we give our friends and listeners time to make their own Hpnotiq margarita?
Absolutely.
Good luck finding Hpnotiq liqueur.
I'm going to find it because I bet it's cool.
Well, I didn't really look, but I probably could have found it.
I did make my own sour mix too.
Ooh, fancy.
Yeah, it's easy to make and you can find a recipe all over the internet. I highly recommend it.
All right, everybody go make your Hpnotiq margaritas. Hold on. And we're back.
Yes, we are.
Karen, might you have a brief synopsis of this film?
I do.
Go on. Tell me a story.
F.W. Murnau is struggling to create his silent classic Nosferatu on location in Eastern Europe. The director is obsessed with making this the most authentic vampire movie ever. To that end, Murnau has employed a real vampire, Max Schreck, explaining to the crew that he is the ultimate of that new breed, the method actor. Trained by Stanislavsky himself, Schreck will appear only in character and only at night.
Thank you, Karen, for that very spoilerish synopsis.
Does kind of give it away, doesn't it?
Yeah, and you did a hell of a job on that name, Karen. Stanislavsky. Yeah,
Stanislavsky.
Yeah.
Well, before we even start, I already have information for you.
Do you?
You want to know what method acting is?
We are a match, by the way.
Oh, excellent. It's always a good sign.
Absolutely, Karen. Pray tell, what could method acting be?
Method acting, informally known as the method, is a range of training and rehearsal techniques as formulated by a number of different theater practitioners that seeks to encourage sincere and expressive performances through identifying with, understanding, and experiencing a character's inner motivation and emotions. These techniques are built on Stanislavsky's system, developed by the Russian actor and director Konstantin Stanislavsky, and captured in his books An Actor Prepares, Building a Character, and Creating a Role. So basically, it requires an actor to use experiences from their own life to bring themselves closer to the character.
Imagine when your first dog died, Karen. Bring that emotion to the screen. Something like that.
Yeah. Or imagine how angry you were at your podcast partner. Remember that emotion.
Yes, embrace the anger.
Come
You
to
don't
the dark
know the
side.
power of the dark side.
Exactly. For the record, I have never been angry with Greg, ever.
Not yet.
You keep trying.
I'll keep pushing those buttons, though.
Poke the bear.
All right, are we ready to get into it, Karen?
Absolutely.
Shadow of the Vampire from the year 2000, starring John Malkovich and Willem Dafoe. Film starts, Karen. Well, first of all, where did you watch this film?
I watched it on YouTube.
I did too. It's kind of hard to find. I tried watching it on Vimeo because I just figured you would watch it on YouTube. I started watching it and I got all the way through the credits until they started speaking. And they were speaking in a foreign language, Karen.
Oh, bummer. Yeah, mine had ads.
Mine did not have ads.
So I had to sit through ads. They were
Then
smart.
I had to start all over, Karen, on YouTube.
They were smart. They didn't put the ad in until about 15 minutes in. And then I'm like, oh, I don't want to start it over. You know, you can just move the little cursor thing, but I just stuck with it. It wasn't that bad.
Right. Even when I started watching it on Vimeo, I went through and clicked throughout the timeline periodically just to see if there were ads. Because if there were, I wasn't going to watch it on Vimeo, but there wasn't. But then they started speaking in French or some shit. And I can tell it was overdubbed because he was speaking. I could, it was like those old Kung Fu
Godzilla.
movies where
It's Godzilla.
Yeah. So then I went to YouTube and the closed captioning was on. And I also did the scan thing too, where I was looking for, and I didn't see any commercials. And the closed captioning was on. And I just figured it was just on. That's the way it was uploaded to YouTube. But
Mine was on too, but about halfway through the film, it jumped.
Yeah,
so
mine did too.
It was way off.
Yeah, mine did too. So then I said, oh, I can turn it off. So I turned it off. But I didn't have commercials in mine. That's odd.
That is odd.
But anyway.
So no warnings.
No.
But exceedingly long credits.
Credits. And I wrote very Art Deco.
Yes.
And I also made a note that it was produced by Nicolas Cage.
I saw that too.
And as we're recording this, boys and girls, oddly enough, Nicolas Cage has a vampire movie coming out in
he does.
days.
Renfield or something, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. And then the film starts and I wrote 6 minutes and 11 seconds later.
Yes, it was long.
It was long. Lots of credits. And we have words to read, Karen, just like it was a fucking silent movie.
Not that we don't think that also. We like silent movies. Okay, go ahead. You don't be disparaging towards them.
But I have to read, Karen.
Good for
read.
You. Make those neurons fire.
It says Jofa Film Studios, Berlin, 1920. Then we have more words to read, Karen. It's like one of them silent film. What do we call them? Cards? I don't know. Yeah, whatever. It says Jofa Film Studios, Berlin, 1921. Brilliant German filmmaker Friedrich Wilhelm Murnau is refused permission by Bram Stoker's estate to film his novel Dracula. Murnau simply changes the name, calling his vampire Count Orlok and his film Nosferatu. He then creates the most realistic vampire film ever made. Ever! And establishes himself amongst the greatest directors of all time. So
I mean,
first off, I have a question. How many vampire films had been made up to that point? Really?
there was, I think, one. Didn't we
Yeah,
talk
one.
about that?
I mean, the novel was only 20 years old at the time, right?
I think there were plays, though, and
Yeah, there
things. But I just think it's so ballsy. They said no, and he just said, screw you, I'm going to do it anyway.
So the film starts and they're filming Nosferatu, right? And we see the scene where, what's her name in the film? Ellen or Mina, depending on which version you watch, is playing with her cat. And Frederick gives her direction.
Yeah, it's very interesting.
I found it fascinating.
That he could talk to her the
Yes.
whole time because it's a silent film. It's amazing. He can talk and he says things like,
Sweet pussy.
well, that you're very happy in your house. You have nice clothes, a nice house, and you're married to a kind man who's promised to love you forever. You don't even think of death. There's no notion of death itself the whole time. So he can evoke those emotions from his actors. Because it's silent, you don't hear anything. It was
I imagine
amazing.
that's what they did too,
of
right?
course, but I never thought of that.
I didn't either.
This is like a big light bulb moment for me. Like, oh, how cool is that?
I know, me too. Now, pick up the book.
Right.
Oh, this is foolishness. You don't believe in such things, but that comes later. But still, he's basically telling them how to act.
In real time, yes.
And they don't have any lines, which I don't know why she asked for her fucking script later, but whatever.
Well, yeah, you don't really even need to be prepared because they're going to tell you everything to do.
Yeah,
I mean, I'm sure they, have an idea, and they do kind of have lines because
they do talk sometimes, but I also wrote everyone's wearing dark glasses.
Yeah, I didn't know why that was.
And I was wondering if it was heard about, how, remember we were talking about Mystery of the Wax Museum and that the lights had to be so bright that the wax was melting and things like that. But that was for that Technicolor process. So I don't know. I thought it might have been to shield their eyes from the light.
Maybe. And they did use filters too. They said, if you remember, that they used the blue filters for night and the yellow filters for day. So they were using that technology. And not everybody was wearing them.
No, the photographer was not. So then we learned they're going to leave Berlin to film elsewhere. I guess Czechoslovakia, I read. But Greta, who plays Ellen or Mina.
They say Ellen in this movie, so they're going with the original.
Right. So Greta doesn't want to go because it's the beginning of theater season and she lives for the stage or whatever, which I could see, at the time. On the stage, you can actually recite lines and sing and do whatever. But Frederick tells her that this role in this film will make her a great actress.
Yes, she's upset because she's missing out on parts in Berlin and money. And she says, you're ignoring me. You didn't used to ignore me. So she says, there was a time you didn't ignore me. So it sounds like they had a little affair or something together.
Maybe.
And he asks her, why would you want to act in a play when you can act in a film? But she says, I like the audience.
I imagine at the time actors would prefer to act on stage in front of a live audience where exactly what I said, they could actually recite lines and do musical numbers or whatever instead of just
and you get feedback
acting
from
to
the
a
audience.
camera.
Yes. You get applause and laughs and things like that.
And here I made a note that they gave the cat laudanum.
Well, wait, he does say, consider it a sacrifice for your art, which does come up again later.
It does.
But yes, laudanum plays a big role in this film.
Thought to myself,
they said,
we've been doing a lot of films with laudanum lately for some reason. It must have been a very popular drug back in the day.
It was because there were just a couple of guys standing around and said, what did you give the cat? And he says laudanum to keep him docile under the lights. Did it show? And the one guy said he did look a little pickled. Thought that was kind of funny.
So as they finish filming, Frederick is leaving the set and the art director Albin wants to know who's playing the vampire. How tall is he and all these things? Because he feels like he thinks he's got to create a costume or whatever for this person. And Frederick just ignores him and leaves the set. And the crew hypothesize about where Frederick is going.
And there's just a brief snap of where he went, right?
Yeah,
Balls.
and what the hell was that?
I don't know.
I didn't either.
A house of ill repute.
It looked like a weird dinner party with
a dinner. That's the kind of dinner parties you
I don't
go
know, because
to?
it looked like a restaurant, because
I think it was a whorehouse.
there were tables like with tablecloths on them, and looked like they were like performing there on the
I think it was a whorehouse
and
where there was a cabaret.
where it was women dressed like men and women dressed like women interacting with each other, and there were two bare breasts covered with black paint or something.
Yeah, it was very quick.
It was weird. Very weird.
I think it shows he likes a certain lifestyle, and there looked like there were drugs involved.
Cut back to the crew back at the studio talking about the travel plans. And one of them tells the others that Max Schreck is playing the vampire. And no one's heard of him, but apparently Frederick has worked with him before at some theater company or some shit.
With Stanislavsky in Moscow, he says. But while they're standing there discussing it, they kind of make the mistake and call him Dracula. And they all say, oh, no, we can't say Dracula. It's Count Orlok, because they didn't get permission. So it was just kind of funny. They admit that they didn't get it.
And we also learned that he really is into his role, and he is like method actor, and he will only be seen in full costume as the vampire.
Yeah, and they're only going to film at night.
So next we see him getting on the train to leave to go to Czechoslovakia.
Did you see the name of the train?
I did, but I didn't make a note of it.
Karen.
Karen?
Well,
Caren?
Charon. Charon. In Greek myth, Charon was the ferryman who conveyed the souls of the dead across the river Styx.
Oh.
So that's not a good sign for them. It's where people would put low value coins in or around the mouth of the deceased so that they could, or next to the cremation urn containing their ashes, so that they had fare to go across the rivers. But that's who led you across the rivers to your death, harried your soul.
The next they cut to getting on the train to leave, and Frederick is keeping everything very secret. Even the producer doesn't know exactly what the film is that they're filming.
No, they have no idea. They don't have a script. They don't have any idea what it is.
And then he is forced to talk to the press, so he gives them some very vague answers when they're getting on the train, and the press wants to know, what films? What are you filming? And what are you doing?
Which is weird, but I guess they were interested in that kind of stuff.
So then we see Frederick doing a soliloquy about filming moving pictures.
I called it a love poem to cinema.
Yeah.
He's rallying the troops, basically.
They're preparing to film the carriage scene, ? But that's not what they are at all. They're just getting in a carriage to go to where the location they're filming on. But the horses had those black things over their heads, so I thought they were doing that scene where...
Yeah, it's very reminiscent of it. And the horses even seem a little perturbed.
Yeah.
You know?
They probably use the same horses, right? Well, I guess that's what we're meant to think. Anyway.
But they're loading up wagons that horses are pulling with all the equipment.
And they find a bottle of what appears to be blood
in one of the trunks. But there's also a car. So there's horse-drawn carriages and one car.
Because I assume they need the horses for the scene where the horse-drawn carriage is. So then all the crew arrive at the inn, I call it, and they all want to know about the filming schedule. And Frederick is reluctant to share anything other than they'll be filming at night, and they'll know what they're filming when they need to know.
He's cagey about when things will be filmed.
There is no schedule.
And they do say, well, where are the extras? And he just lifts his arms and says, here they are. They're the locals.
Yes. Then they all go back to their rooms, up to the rooms. And it appears that Gustav, who plays Hutter or Harker, depending on which version you're familiar with, he appears to be sleeping in the same room where he was filmed when he was in the inn in Nosferatu.
Oh, he does. I didn't notice that.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right. He does.
Except the cross is not on the wall, which we get to shortly. Then we cut to a scene of someone carrying a ferret in a cage into what appears to be a cave or something. And then Max Schreck approaches it and grabs the cage.
Well, we only see the creepy hands.
Yeah, but we know it's Max Schreck.
Do we?
If you know the film. Yeah.
Yes.
Next we cut and they're filming the scene of Gustav finding the book about vampires in his room.
So I should just say, you don't have to see Nosferatu in order to enjoy this movie.
No, but it helps.
It does. Didn't you
It
think
makes it more enjoyable if you have it.
It does. It makes you feel like you kind of know when you recognize certain scenes, and they are recreating them very well.
And
so,
I think even sometimes they do cut the actual scenes from the film into this film.
Oh, do you? I didn't know if they were redoing them all or not.
Some of them were, but I think the early ones were actual footage.
I guess there are some, because the funeral of the coffins coming out in the street. Yeah. So you don't have to see that movie, but it will give you a different level of understanding, I think, if you have seen it, especially if you've seen it in a reasonable amount of time and you can remember it. In my brain, if I had seen it a long time ago, I'm sure I would remember it, but I think it makes a bigger impression if you've seen it. Just my personal opinion.
Yeah. And once again, they were filming from outside of the window of his actual room where he's staying, and he's finding the book, and Frederick is giving him all the direction he needs. And throughout the film, we get the feeling that they don't think that Gustav is a very good actor. But they always say, "Oh, that was wonderful, Gustav. You were terrific." But then they look at each other and roll their eyes or whatever. But then a native wanders into frame, as Frederick says.
I think it's the owner of the
inn.
Pub or inn, one of them.
Yeah, and I wrote, apparently they've removed all the crosses from the rooms, and the woman is not happy.
The owner's not happy, yeah.
She says they are not there for decoration. They are there for a reason. And then I wrote, we have a shot from the original Nosferatu right here. Don't remember exactly what it is, but there is one right here at this point.
I don't know. He's walking into the castle, so maybe it's the horses approaching or something.
Yeah, or no, maybe it's Nosferatu on the carriage. That's what it was. Yeah, so then we're filming Gustav arriving at the castle. Again, Frederick giving all the direction he needs. And Albin, who is the producer and art director, is not happy that he was not been consulted about building the sets. But it appears that Frederick is using all pre-existing locations.
It does to me, too.
So then they're filming Hutter meeting Orlok.
Yes, they're having him walk very slowly through a tunnel or towards a tunnel. And he's visibly afraid.
Mm-hmm. So I wrote, he seems actually scared. And he does walk in, and they all congratulate him on his performance.
Which is funny because he just walked in a tunnel. That's all
but
he did.
Schreck is in there too. We do see.
He is.
So he's walking into a tunnel to Max Schreck as the vampire, right? Albin doesn't really believe that Schreck was an actor in that whatever theater company
in Moscow with Stanislavsky.
And so he asks Frederick where he found him, and Frederick says, in that tunnel.
Yes.
So apparently their cameraman or photographer, Wolfgang, I guess he goes into the tunnel.
Yes.
And then
which you have to pay attention to, because at first I didn't know that.
They find him not well. And actually earlier in the inn, Gustav walks in Wolfgang's room.
Yeah, and he's not well there.
And
he's shivering.
Gustav closes the window.
Oh.
And then we see Wolfgang in a corner, shivering and shaking. And I wrote, is he a junkie? At least in my handwritten notes.
That's what I thought too.
Because he says, oh, excuse me. He interrupted him, shooting up or some shit, right? But maybe it wasn't. Maybe
he got bitten. I thought he was a junkie too, because it's all over this film.
So anyway, they find Wolfgang in the tunnel, and he's not doing too good. He's got the shakes.
Not looking good.
And they usher him out as Max Schreck looks from the window above.
Yes.
in the castle where he's staying. Yeah, he stays at the castle. Everyone else stays at the inn. So the others arrive at the inn. And
Yeah. The woman takes one look at Wolfgang.
And says, Nosferatu, and kisses her cross.
Yes. Frederick says, just have a brandy. You'll feel better in the morning. And it sounds like the director, Frederick, is going to look at some dailies.
Yeah.
He says, bring the film up to my room.
Then they're filming the scene of Hutter and Orlok doing paperwork. And Frederick introduces Max to the rest of the cast and crew. I don't think everyone's met him formally. They just in the tunnel, right? They just saw him for a second. And this is where we learn that Schreck is a method actor, and the makeup artist tries to put makeup on him, and Frederick tells him to stop. No makeup.
This is where we see a little bit of the conflict between Frederick and Orlok. Because Frederick says no makeup, he gets no makeup.
And Schreck asks for makeup.
And he says no.
Frederick says no.
He says, I would like a little makeup. And director says no.
He actually says, he doesn't say it exactly like that, Karen, but yeah.
He kind of does. He doesn't demand it. He says
I would like a little makeup.
Okay. True. But he tells him to look at the contracts very intently. And Orlok says, these aren't right.
Yes, he does.
Like, because if you watch the other movie, they are written in symbols. And Orlok says, these aren't right. And Frederick says, just deal with it.
Yeah,
it's fine.
Go with it. Act. Yeah. Pretend. So next they're filming the scene where Count Orlok sees the locket of Ellen
fall out of
Hutter's
bag. Yeah.
So they film that, and again, Frederick gives Max direction. And Henrik, who's the screenwriter, gives him directions like, what is it that you desire? You most desire but cannot have. And Max Schreck says, the light of the sun.
Yes. He's very enamored with the locket. The locket contains a picture of Greta, Ellen, but he holds on to it, and he really is enthralled with the locket, the picture.
And then Max does a little ad-libbing about being neighbors with Hutter.
Well, he also says, your wife has a beautiful bosom, which is different than in the movie. Doesn't he say throat in the movie?
Yeah.
But I think one of the guys
I don't read lips well, so I don't know what exactly he said, but that's what we were.
Well, that's what I think Frederick or one of the other guys says, give the lip readers a thrill.
Yeah.
So they left it in there. I wonder if he really says that.
Then Gustav, Frederick, and Henrik discuss Schreck back at the inn. And Frederick says that Schreck's peculiarities are like love-making games, Karen. When you believe them, what does he say?
I don't know.
You believe them while they're happening, but they always fall short of anybody getting seriously hurt or some shit like that, right?
All I have is he says, no one's been hurt. It's all fantasy.
Next, we cut to Max reading a book. I don't know what book it is. It's talking about forests and woods dying or decaying or whatever.
I think it's a poem.
Then someone brings him the bottle of blood that we saw earlier. And he asks, no rats? He just said, you set a mean table. Or, you set a mean table.
Well, he says, there was a time when I fed with golden chalices.
And he explains how he feeds erratically.
Well, he says, he feeds the way old men pee. Sometimes all at once, sometimes drop by drop.
I wouldn't know that, Karen, but yeah.
Of course not. Well, neither would I.
The next are filming the dinner scene with Orlok and Hutter. And again, Frederick giving lots of direction and instructing Gustav to cut the bread. And he yells, startling Gustav, forcing him to cut his finger for real.
But that was so rude. He does it on purpose to get him to actually cut his finger.
And then once he does, Max goes to suck the blood from his finger. Like he's on him.
Frederick's yelling, blood, blood. Isn't he? Like,
yeah. And then like some of the lights explode or some shit.
Yeah, he really goes at him, though.
Yeah.
Like,
Then we see Schreck feeding on Wolfgang again once the lights go out.
yeah, like brutally.
And Frederick yells at Wolfgang about the equipment malfunctioning. When are you going to get this equipment fixed? You're not fully invested in this film, Wolfgang. I'm highly disappointed at you as you're lying on the floor.
Being
Drained
mutilated.
of blood.
Yes.
But they all leave because they got to
Well,
take Wolfgang to the hospital, but Schreck stays behind.
But Gustav says, I saw you to Schreck. And he's not happy about it.
They all leave and Schreck watches what they've already filmed using the film editor. And he goes up real close and looks straight into the lens, Karen. So there's light. And
yeah, I think he's simulating the light because that's what he misses most.
So they're outside getting ready to leave, and Frederick is concerned that Wolfgang cannot finish the film. So he wants to find another photographer, but Henrik, who's the screenwriter, I think wants to stop filming. He's like, we're done. This is over. And Frederick's like, no, it's not over. We're going to go get a new photographer. Frederick says, I'll take him to the hospital. I'll take Wolfgang to the hospital, and then I'll get a new photographer in Berlin.
And I said, the car drives away, hopefully taking off to the hospital.
But where does it go, Karen?
But no, they don't go to the hospital. Where do they go?
They go back to the castle. They don't go anywhere, apparently.
Well, they drove to the castle. They did drive off like he was taking him to the hospital, but he leaves Wolfgang in the car.
Yeah, see, it's hard to me understand what was going on. Did they drive away? And
he acted like he was taking him to the hospital, and then he was going to go fly to get back to Berlin to get a new photographer. But what he does first is he drives to yell at Count Orlok.
Yeah. But aren't they leaving the castle?
No, they're leaving the pub. They all went back to the inn.
Okay.
And then they're leaving the inn, and he goes to the castle instead of going to the hospital.
Okay. So then we see Frederick, and he goes to see Schreck and chastises him for hurting Wolfgang.
He's pissed.
Yeah.
How dare you destroy my photographer?
Yeah, apparently Frederick and Schreck had an agreement. So if we don't know already, this is kind of where we learn, well, this is what's really going on, right?
Well, he says, why the photographer? Why not the script girl? And Schreck says,
the script girl.
I'll eat her later. But he says, you agreed not to hurt my people. This is where we hear the whole bargain of what's going on.
And then Schreck doesn't believe the writer is needed anymore.
Frederick says, I don't expect you to understand it, but the writer is necessary. All of my crew is necessary. Do you understand? And then they get in a discussion about the ship.
Yeah, Schreck doesn't want to do the scenes on the ship because I do not sail.
Kind of like you don't fly.
Yeah. And Frederick threatens to replace him with a double and take away all his close-ups.
That'll learn him.
And Frederick eventually relents and tells Schreck he doesn't have to do the scenes on the ship, but he must sail to Heligoland, or else he will be unable to do the scenes with Greta.
Yes, this is where we hear about their Greta.
And Schreck agrees to go to Heligoland if Frederick flies him there.
Why do you think he didn't sail? Is he just being a dick? Or is it some lore?
Well, I don't know if it was at this point, but, we did in, that Hammer film, vampires can be killed by running water.
Yes, but
that's the only thing I could think of.
But in the original Dracula book, he comes by ship.
Okay, well, I don't know.
Like the Demeter, right?
That's the only thing I could think of.
It just seemed weird. I didn't know if because he needs to travel with the dirt. Was there not enough dirt? What was the issue? But he flat out refused to do it. Mm-hmm. And how did they fly him out? Well, in that little plane. We'll get to that.
The German biplane. That's how.
At night?
I guess. I don't know. But Frederick says if he flies him in, he must leave the crew alone. And Schreck says, or else what? And Frederick tells Schreck that he can harm him. And Schreck says, how can you harm me when I do not even know how to harm myself?
And he clicks his fingernails together a lot, and they're very long and gross and reminiscent of the ugly hands in the original film.
Then Schreck stares at the locket containing the photo of Greta and gives a soliloquy.
Yes. You've just listened to half of this week's episode. Are you loving it? If so, can you do us a big favor and leave a review wherever you listen? Reviews help us grow the podcast. We just want to say thanks so much for your support. Now let's get back to the good stuff.
And we have words to read, Karen. To accommodate his difficult star, Murnau orders a duplicate of the ship built on the grounds of Count Orlok's castle. Then we have a scene of Albin and Henrik discussing ghost and spiritualism and ectoplasm.
Yes.
They're talking about what's the weirdest thing you've, what's the
most
thing?
wonderful thing you've ever seen?
Yes, that's what it is. And Albin says he saw ectoplasm come from a spiritualist's mouth. And Henrik.
Well, what did it look like? Seaweed.
And Henrik says he once saw Greta naked. And Albin says, well, that beats ectoplasm. And they're drinking. And Schreck comes in. And they begin asking him about when he was born and when he became a vampire and all this stuff. And
well, they tell him, Frederick's gone to get another photographer. You can take your ears off now. And he won't do it. So they say, ooh, they're drinking. So they're a little drunk. And they're like, ooh, we're in the presence of a vampire. Let's find out all kinds of vampire stuff.
Yeah. So he doesn't remember when he was born. And they ask him lots of vampire stuff. And they discuss Bram Stoker's novel. And Schreck says he did not enjoy the book. It made him sad because Dracula had no servants.
Yes.
But he goes on to talk about other things that I never even either thought about, what it would be like to be a vampire and, the loneliness and how you forget what food tastes like and forget how to set a table and how to make a bed and all this stuff.
Because you don't use it. He says a man comes to his ancestral home and he has to feed him when he hasn't eaten food in centuries. Could he even remember how to buy bread or select cheese and wine? How to prepare a meal? He hasn't prepared a meal in centuries. How to make a bed? So it's kind of sad. They make him a little bit, where you have empathy for him because there's all these things where he hasn't done any of this stuff. He has no idea. He doesn't remember when he was. Everything they ask him, he says, I don't remember. That's how long he's been around.
And then at one point they say, if you're so lonely, can't you make more vampires? And Schreck says he can't because he's too old. And as a matter of fact, he remembers he was never able to for some reason. Then they ask how he became a vampire, and he says it was a woman. It was a woman. And then okay, now this is getting interesting, they say. And then he grabs a bat out of the sky and eats it.
Yeah, he pulls an Ozzy Osbourne right there in front of him, grabs a bat out of the air and rips its head off and sucks its blood right there in front of them.
And they're drinking, so I don't know that they even really know what's going on, but they're like, whoa, dude.
And he's drinking too. He's drinking whatever their bottle of, he calls it schnapps, I think.
He tells them apparently a woman turned him into a vampire and then left him in the morning, and he can't remember what she looks like anymore. He says at one point I had a painting of her on wood, and then I had a marble, relief of her. But now I cannot and then I had a picture of her in my brain, but now I do not even have that. And that's when he takes the bottle from Albin and guzzles about half of it. And he calls it schnapps.
Yeah.
Schnapps of the country. But he says he forgets what it tastes like. And I wrote, I'm not even sure he can taste it.
No, I don't know. But he hands the bottle back, and I'm thinking, now it's covered in bat blood.
Yes, that's what I thought too. And I was looking to see if the guy took another swig, but he didn't.
They didn't, no. And they're impressed with him because he stayed in character.
Right.
Yeah.
As he leaves, they're like, Oh my God, he's awesome.
What dedication.
Dude.
Yeah.
And then we see Schreck feeding on a member of the crew on the ship that has been constructed, and he throws him off. Apparently over a cliff, I assume. So he gone. Then we see the new photographer, Fritz Wagner, played by Cary Elwes. Is that how you say his name? Elwes? Elwes? I don't know.
I guess.
He's in
From The Princess Bride. Yep.
Yeah.
He's
He
handsome.
arrives. He is a good-looking guy. Blonde hair, blue-eyed.
Yeah, never realized how handsome
Perfect
he was
German.
until he showed up in this. Because in The Princess Bride, he's kind of goofy,
Yeah.
which doesn't mean he couldn't be handsome, but
So he arrives on location, but Murnau has remained in Berlin to calm the financiers. And he's in a German biplane, with the Iron Cross on it and everything.
he flew it in, right?
Yeah. And he's filming a scene, I think, with the angry townsfolk with their torches and pitchforks or something.
He has to use a 35 millimeter lens, which is not his usual animal,
Not his
but it'll
usual.
do.
Yeah, not his weapon of choice or whatever. Then he fires a gun, startling the townspeople while they film. And they're like, oh, that was awesome. Did you see that? Did you see that reaction? And I wrote, he appears to be a good photographer because he knows all about slow motion and no one else does.
Yeah.
He's like ahead of his time.
If he runs the film through the camera unnaturally fast and is played at normal speed, it will look unnaturally slow.
So next they're filming a scene where Hutter finds Nosferatu in the broken casket where you can see his face sleeping with his eyes wide open.
It's a cool scene.
Yeah, it's not. But Fritz is not impressed with Schreck, apparently. And he introduces himself to Schreck and they discuss Plato and philosophy. Got anything for us about Plato and philosophy, Karen?
I tried to look it up, what they were
About the
saying.
shadow and...
Yeah, I couldn't find it, but I didn't look very deeply, but I didn't recognize it and I couldn't find it. I said, sounds like they quote Plato to each other about shadows, and he says, you're a Renaissance man, you must know Plato, or you must have read Plato. And Schreck says, I knew him. But he does tell Fritz does, that he's seen men who have been dead for 2 weeks who look better than Schreck does.
Yeah.
So that was kind of funny.
Yeah, filming war footage.
Yeah.
Then they begin filming the scene on the ship.
The famous scene. Yeah.
And then I wrote Wismar. They're in Wismar?
Yeah, but that's Bryn Mawr in the film where they're bringing the coffins out.
And then Greta arrives, and she does not seem pleased to be there.
No, she's not.
Yeah, and apparently she and Fritz, the cameraman, have met before.
In Morocco.
Fritz and the others leave her there with her dogs to go and pre-light a set.
Do you know what kind of dogs they are?
I don't really remember that much, but they're...
I think they're Pekingese.
Yeah. I was going to say, as soon as you say it, I'm going to know what they are.
Which were bred for Chinese royalty. And they are just lap dogs. They're just to be companions to royalty is what they were bred for. But they're pretty smart. In the top 100, you want to guess where they are? They're not that smart in the top 100.
They're in the top 100? Or they're not in the top 10, though?
No. Oh, no.
Oh, okay.
But there are a lot of dog breeds, so they're in the top 100.
I'll say they're number 72.
Oh, they're number 73. They're right between 72 is the beagle, and beagles are pretty smart.
They are.
And right above, so right below beagles, and then right above bloodhounds, which are at 74. And in 2021, which is the most recent I could find, they were number 94 in popularity. So not as popular because they're on the same list as schnauzers and Brussels Griffons. So not, popular like labs and goldens. They're not among breeds that everyone knows. They're cute, flattened faced though, which is not my preference. Little dogs, lap dogs. And she's got 2 of them, it looks like.
And we cut to Schreck and Frederick having a conversation, and Schreck wants to see Greta.
Now.
Bring her to me. He says, I will not continue unless you bring her to me. And
Which, why would he do that? Because if
Yeah.
he's going to kill her, that's not going to do well
Yeah.
for his movie.
that's right. Frederick refuses. He says, you will see her in your final scene with her. And then they argue, and Frederick goes to attack Schreck, and he like tries to strangle him, but Schreck just kind of grins and rises.
Yeah, he just kind of
and
laughs at him.
scares Frederick off.
He does.
So Fritz and Henrik and is Albin with them? I don't know. But a bunch of them go to where Schreck's coffin is. Because Henrik followed Frederick there. So they know where Schreck lives. And this is where Henrik begins to believe that Schreck is a real vampire. He
Yeah,
kinda
he's not
tells
an actor.
them
Yeah.
the vampire lore about how, his soil or is in his coffin, so he has to sleep in the coffin with his native soil and all that. He starts telling them all the lore. And
And Fritz says there are no real vampires. And then they talk about, you saw him with the bat. And then Albin says, oh, we were drunk. We were all drunk.
And Henrik says, well, Frederick, look at that way he directs. He uses real peasants to play peasants in the film.
Yes, they're in the Carpathians.
Why wouldn't he get a real vampire as well?
Right. So he says, we're in the Carpathian Mountains using peasants to play peasants, a real castle. So he's using a real vampire.
And next we see Henrik walking through town with a lantern.
We should say that Fritz and Greta are there, right? And they're a little loopy.
Greta's not there. It's another woman completely, I think.
Oh, is it?
I don't think it's Greta. I just think it's some girl Fritz picked up. Or it could be the makeup girl.
Maybe.
Or the script girl or whatever.
She seems a little out of it.
Yeah, because they're smoking something.
Yeah.
And a pipe. And then we see Henrik.
Laudanum, I think.
Do you smoke it?
I don't know, but it's what they
do.
said later. I don't know.
So then Henrik's walking through town with a lantern, and we see Max creeping in the shadows behind him.
Yeah, I thought it was over for him. But
no. Henrik? I did
Yeah.
too. And then they're at the hotel they're staying at in wherever they are now. And we hear Greta screaming. So Fritz and Albin go in to check on her, and she's rolling around on her bed, Karen, with her blouse open, and we see 2 bare breasts, which I was not expecting in this film.
Bonus. Yeah, she's naked from the waist up.
Well, she's not
and I
naked.
couldn't tell.
She's
Well,
got her blouse on and her jacket over top. It's just open.
Oh, I thought it was a robe.
I think she's wearing the same clothes we saw her in earlier.
But I couldn't tell if it was blood on her neck or a necklace, but it was a necklace because they came back to it.
And apparently she's on morphine.
Laudanum is what Fritz says.
No, he says morphine.
Oh, I thought he said laudanum.
Says
But
it's
he
morphine.
takes a picture of her because he's a dick.
And I think that he might have provided the drugs to her.
I think so.
And because he tells Albin that Frederick knows all about it. Don't worry about it. She'll be fine. And then they lock her in. And we see shadows of Schreck walking up the stairs, and then we see Schreck. It's very reminiscent of the film Nosferatu, right?
Yes.
And then he approaches her room, and he's sniffing around the hall.
Her door is locked. He goes to another room. It's locked.
And he's
Goes to
sniffing
another
the whole
room.
time.
Yeah. Which, just a tip, lock your door.
Yeah.
Because
and they do
he
say
could
that
get in.
earlier, that they're all supposed to keep their doors locked. And then we see Henrik behind him in the hallway go into his room and asks us if everything else is all right. And then apparently he goes into his room. And then here again, I thought, well, he gone.
I know. Right. But again, he's not.
Well, we didn't know that yet. But yeah, I thought he was gone. So then we're in Heligoland. And they're setting up the final scene, I guess, Ellen's bedroom. And Albin complains about natural light. Can't I have some natural light?
Oh, I thought it was Fritz, the photographer, that was doing that. But
I think Albin was. But anyway, they're talking about the lighting. And
it is Albin. You're right.
And then he takes Fritz's pipe and does a hit. I said, takes a hit. Whatever he's smoking, he takes a hit. And he holds it Does a good job. Didn't waste that hit. And then we get a shot of Frederick shooting up. And apparently he's doing that laudanum.
I see. Now I had morphine, but
No, because, well, it comes up later.
yeah.
And we see Schreck creeping around again, I guess, in the studio where they're filming. And he throws a lever and a door opens, letting the sunlight in, and he runs away.
Yes, which is important later.
I know, but I don't know why he did it. But
well, we find out later why he did it.
I guess, but it didn't. Whatever, didn't make sense to me. So then we see Albin and Fritz at Frederick's room. They bust in because he's not answering the door, and apparently Frederick has been doing laudanum. At least that's what Fritz says, and he knows apparently. And then Frederick starts talking.
Yes, he spills his guts.
Yeah, he gets diarrhea of the mouth.
Yes.
He says there is no Max Schreck. He doesn't know who he is. Says he found him while he was scouting for locations, living in a monastery. And he made an agreement with him to play an actor playing a vampire in exchange for Greta. And of course, Fritz and Alvin are shocked.
They're not happy.
And they're trying to figure out a way to say, we got to get off this island. We're on an island here. And Fritz tells Albin that there is no way. He checked the fuel tanks of the plane and they're empty.
Yep.
Says, well, we have to shoot Greta's scene tonight. So I think they have a plan, Karen, or something. So Greta arrives.
Which they did not let Greta in on.
No. They won't even give her a script, Karen.
Nope.
So Greta arrives to shoot her scene and she asks about the script and they tell her that Henrik is currently unavailable. And here's why I thought, well, he gone. That's why he's unavailable, right? So then Greta asks, why is everyone so depressed looking? Who died? And I'm like, Henrik. That's what I thought they were alluding to that, right? And then Schreck arrives and meets Greta, and Greta seems a little creeped out.
Yeah, because he's a little over enthusiastic.
And then they set up the scene, and Frederick gives Greta direction, and she's supposed to seduce the Count.
She's in her flimsy white nightgown.
Very flimsier than the one in Nosferatu, Karen.
Yes, yes.
That's almost the kind of nightgown I was looking for in Nosferatu. Almost.
But she's going to make the ultimate sacrifice for love, or seduce the Count.
And right before she dies, she's supposed to stab the Count with a wooden stake.
Which that's not the same as the movie.
It is not.
So they've changed it. Like they're hoping she'll kill him.
So then Schreck moves in and she threatens him with a stake. I mean, like he moves, he's not waiting for action. He's ready to go right there.
But she says,
back off.
Slow down, handsome, while she's holding the stake.
And then Fritz asks Frederick, do you know what you're doing? So while they're filming the scene, he says
you have to film the scene first. Basically, is all he says to him. He's going to give him Greta, but he has to film the scene first.
But while they're filming the scene, Greta notices that Max has no reflection in the mirror hanging on the wall,
and she freaks out.
Freaks the fuck out.
Yeah,
she goes ballistic. And then Frederick gives her a little something to calm her nerves.
little shot.
Little shot of laudanum, probably.
Which is just so rude. This whole sequence is just awful. It's awful. And
Greta has a flashback as she's like comatose, lying there, to the first scene in the film where Frederick is telling her that, it'll make her a great actress and consider it a sacrifice for her art.
But she's completely out of it.
But Schreck wants her now. And Frederick tells him he needs a shot of him clutching his heart first. He needs his death scene first. So Frederick films the scene and gives Max direction.
You're intoxicated with blood and desire.
Yes. And he tells Greta, can you hear me? Bat your eyes.
It's
Can
terrible.
You feel the stake? Can you reach for the stake laying beside you? She does, and then Frederick tells Schreck to grab his heart and die, do his death scene. He does, and then Frederick whispers something to Fritz. So once again, I think they have a plan.
Yes, they do.
So then Schreck says, I want her now. And he begins to feed on her. And,
Yeah, they let him have her. They
Yeah.
just let him start feeding on her.
and then Frederick has Fritz roll the camera. Get this footage.
Yeah,
Film this. And then they move the camera to get a different angle footage of Schreck.
And he's still eating. He's still feeding.
And then we cut to, I guess, Schreck is done and he's sleepy because I think he's snoring with his eyes open. Like,
Yeah, so
with
he's
his head on her chest or something.
He's satiated now. But I couldn't tell if when they drugged her, they drugged him.
No.
Or he just had so much of her blood, which they all watched.
Right. And she's still breathing. She's still alive at this point. And then Albin goes to throw the switch or the lever or whatever that Max did earlier that lets the light in. But apparently Schreck has cut the chain and they are all trapped
inside. And so that lever was supposed to open a door and let the light in, and they were going to kill him with the light.
Mm-hmm.
But he must have gone in and done recon beforehand. That's why he cut the chain. That's why he opened that door, was shocked, and then cut that chain, because he's doing recon, not trusting them, which was right. He shouldn't have trusted them. But they're trapped in there now.
So Schreck realizes that he tried to trick him.
Yes.
And he tells them that he can break their necks and drink their blood.
He does.
Fritz continues filming.
Yes, he does.
And then Fritz goes to shoot Schreck, and he does a couple times with his revolver there that he used to scare the townsfolk.
But that's not going to work.
No. Schreck just laughs, calls him foolish. And then Schreck breaks Fritz's neck as Frederick.
In an instant, it's just done.
As Frederick continues to roll the camera.
Yes, he does.
Then Albin goes after Schreck, and Schreck strangles him. He gone. And then Frederick says he's not satisfied.
It wasn't
Schreck,
a good
I need
angle.
you to go to your original mark. This is unacceptable. Or whatever. So Schreck does.
If it's not in frame, it doesn't exist, he says.
Correct. So then we have the scene where Count Orlok, shadow of his hand, reaches up and grabs Ellen's heart.
Yeah, that was a cool scene too. Yeah.
And then he feeds some more.
Yep.
While Frederick films.
Like a madman at this point.
And we hear people knocking at the door to wherever they're filming. Schreck stops feeding and stares into a stage light. I don't know, embracing the light or whatever. And he pushes it away, and the people outside get the door open, who it's Henrik and the other crew, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Frederick gives Schreck direction as he rolls the camera, and the light hits Schreck, and he does his death thing, and
Frederick's still filming him.
And he tries to give Albin direction, but he's gone. He's
right. He doesn't realize everyone's dead. And then because he's so out of his mind.
The film melts on Schreck doing his final little death
when
scene,
he dies. Yeah.
Yeah. Film melts and Schreck disappears.
But Frederick keeps filming.
Yeah, he continues filming and giving direction, even though Fritz and Albin are dead. Henrik and the other crew enter. Frederick stops filming and says, "I think we have it."
He says, "Can you hold up a board?" And they do.
Yeah, they do.
And there's 3 dead people there. And they just hold up the board for him.
Oh. And he says, "I think we have it." Credits. The end. All right, Karen. Anything you really enjoyed or were pleasantly surprised in this film from 2000?
I really liked this film.
Did you?
Yeah. It's like one of my favorites, I think.
Really?
Maybe because I saw the Nosferatu so recently.
Well, so did I, Karen.
Well, yeah, but for me, I just thought it was so well done. I thought casting was amazing. You know, I thought they were really good in their roles. Sets were fine. Story was good. I just really enjoyed the whole thing. Nobody got hypnotized, so sorry about that with the drink, but
it was pretty good. I mean, acting was as you would expect.
Yeah, high caliber actors, right. Which I guess maybe we've watched a lot of films lately that haven't had high caliber actors, so
the hell you say, Karen?
necessarily. So maybe it just really stood out because of that.
Not high caliber. Let me look back at our most recent episodes, Karen. Lords of Salem. Okay, I'll give you that one.
Happy Birthday to Me.
Nosferatu. I mean,
That one was good.
Captain Kronos, Vampire Hunter.
Stellar.
Yeah. Caroline Monroe. What more could you want?
I'm sticking to my guns.
Okay. I see what you're saying. Yeah, stellar acting. Sets were good. It was filmed good.
I would say the only thing I didn't like.
Okay, so what didn't you like, Karen?
There were a couple of scenes where I didn't know what was going on. Like when he went off to that whorehouse or wherever it was, we had no idea what that was. You know,
they filmed and they showed them filming at night. And after watching Nosferatu, it's obvious they did not film at night ever. The original film.
True.
They tried to use filters, but they weren't very good.
But you were supposed to believe
make it look
that they
like
filmed.
night.
Yes. But you were supposed to believe they filmed at night.
But we know they did not film at night.
True.
I thought it was hard to follow in spots.
It was a little jumpy.
Jumpy. I even wrote, it seems like they tried, maybe they cut some scenes to keep it around 90 minutes because it's almost exactly 90 minutes.
And it was a little difficult for me to keep all the characters straight because they weren't really on the screen that long.
There was no,
like you couldn't figure out who was who. I mean, did we need to know who they were? Not necessarily. Beyond who we knew were the photographer, the director, and the vampire, basically.
Yeah, there was in the cast, there was a Paul, an Elke, and a Maria, and I still don't know who the hell they were.
Yeah, so that
Wolfgang, I got Greta, Albin, Gustav, Henrik, and it took me a while as I was watching. I was making notes. Oh, Henrik's the screenwriter. Oh, yes. Gustav is Hutter. Well, I knew. Oh, Albin. Okay, he's this guy. He's the producer and art director. You know.
But there were a lot of people.
Wolfgang. He's the cameraman, the original cameraman. Okay,
it was a little hard to keep them straight. I agree, but they weren't central to understanding what was going on. Their roles weren't central.
I guess not, but
like who they were.
Is it important to know that Henrik's the screenwriter and that Albin's the producer and art director?
No, I don't think so.
I think it is.
Nah.
They're all kind of nondescript too, looking.
Yes, they're
in a way
just people that are involved but not central.
Yeah.
To me.
So it was fine.
Fine. I thought it was better than fine.
All right, what kind of cocktail rating you want to give it? Unless there's anything else you want to talk glowingly or bad about it.
No, I just think, as we mentioned, that if you have a chance to watch Nosferatu first, I would. You don't have to, but I think it really ups the experience. I think it changes it a little because you kind of know what's happening.
Yeah, it helps, I would say.
I think it's a 2.
Really?
It's not a 3. We've given some 3s, and this is way better than some.
Well, I was gonna give it a 3 just because I think it's a 2.5. But we'll give it a 2. We'll give it a 2.
I'm gonna stand firm with a 2.
You're the boss, Karen.
Because some of the 3s that we've given, it's definitely better than those.
All right. Not as good as The Omen.
No, but there's a range in the 2s.
Okay. I didn't know there was a range. Send me a memo on.
Well, just like there's a range in the 3s. You know, not all 3s are solid 3s.
No, but we've given some that I would say is a 3.5 4s.
True.
So why wouldn't we give 2.5 3s?
Because this one's better than some of the 3s.
So you're saying this is a 2.25?
I think it's a 2. I think it's a solid 2.
It's not a solid 2, but it's not quite a 3 either.
Whatever. I'm sticking with 2. Fight me.
All right.
All right, you're going to fight me. Okay.
Prove me wrong.
I think I enjoyed it more than you.
You did. But it was good. I mean, I'm not saying it's not good. I'm just not as enthusiastic about it as you are because I think it's a little jumpy and hard to follow. And I'm like, who the hell is this? Why are they? What happened?
Maybe I was just
here and we're there. And it's just.
I think I was emotionally affected by the ending. You can't tell who's the bad guy. Is it the director or is it Orlok? I mean, you're supposed to think
Hollywood, Karen.
True. You think the whole time that, the vampire is this horrible person, and he's just, as we always say, he's just doing his job.
Yeah, it's nature.
Just doing what he does, Wild Kingdom. And the director's the one who's awful. He just basically gives this woman who he has no relationship with, no autonomy over,
he
to
did
the vampire.
At some point, apparently.
A brief one. Not that it would make it any better, but
it's all about his art.
It's not his wife, his daughter, his girlfriend, his mother, its sister. He has nothing to do with her, and just says, "Here you go, right up on the bed in a flimsy white nightgown. Yeah. She's all yours. Go ahead."
Like, actors are a commodity to him as a director.
Obviously. Yeah. Okay. All right, go ahead. He's filming. All right, take her now. You can have her. We got our scene. And the other two men are like, okay, filming away. They drug her so she doesn't know. I guess maybe as a woman, it affected me horribly watching that.
All right. Would you like to hear some critic reviews from the Times, Karen?
I'm a little scared.
Way back.
I'm a little scared too now, but sure. Critics Corner. What do you got?
First one I have, Karen, is from Roger Ebert, written January 26th, 2001. Shadow of the Vampire, a wicked new movie about the making of Nosferatu, has an explanation for Schreck's performance. He really was a vampire.
Well, he spoils it right there.
Yeah. This is not a stretch. It is easier for me to believe Schreck was a vampire than he was an actor. Examine any photograph of him in the role and decide for yourself. Consider the rat-like face, the feral teeth, the bat ears, the sunken eyes, the fingernail claws that seem to have grown in the tomb. Makeup? He makes the word irrelevant. In Shadow of the Vampire, the director and writer do two things at the same time. They make a vampire movie of their own, and they tell a backstage story about the measures that a director will take to realize his vision. Quote, Willem Dafoe is Max Schreck, unquote. I put quotes around that because it's not just a line for a movie ad, but the truth. He embodies the Schreck of Nosferatu so uncannily that when real scenes from the silent classic are slipped into the frame, we don't notice a difference. The movie does an uncanny job of recreating the visual feel of Murnau's film. There are shots that look the way moldy basements smell. This material doesn't lend itself to subtlety, and Malkovich and Dafoe chew their lines like characters who know they are always being observed. Some directors do more acting on their sets than the actors do. That was Roger Ebert.
I think he liked it.
I think he did too. So that was your review. This one is more mine. From the San Francisco Chronicle, January 12th, 2001. Shadow of
those hacks. Go ahead, read
that
it.
little community newspaper, the San Francisco Chronicle.
Yeah. Go ahead, whatever.
That coupon rag.
Yeah.
All right. Shadow of the Vampire is a parable about the blurry line between filmmaking and soul stealing. Like Michael Powell's 1960 horror classic, Peeping Tom, it equates filmmaking with emotional rape and plunder. Malkovich is perfectly cast as Murnau. He's expert at playing men who have divested themselves of emotion or sympathy. But he doesn't offer surprises or unexpected dimensions. Dafoe, on the other hand, transforms himself with his shaved head and chalky skin, beak nose, and dragon lady fingernails. He's a marvel as Schreck. Shadow of the Vampire essentially has one thing to say, that creativity is easily twisted by exploitation. Once we've grasped that, the film suffers from shapelessness and lack of momentum. This is basically a parlor game, distinguished by Dafoe's thrilling performance. Now, of course, I'm paraphrasing both.
I guess the Malkovich is kind of one note. Like there is no, he's John
Malkovich playing John Malkovich, I think.
I don't think he's really like that.
No, but
in
he
real
played
life.
lots of roles like that.
Well, go with your strengths.
I think Defoe is much better in this film than Malkovich is.
I think he was nominated for an Oscar.
He
Defoe
was really good. I didn't even recognize him, really. Yeah, Defoe was nominated for Best Supporting Actor, and it was nominated for Best Makeup and Hairstyling. And there's other awards. Bram Stoker Award, they won for Best Screenplay. Golden Globes Awards, Best Supporting Actor, William Dafoe was nominated. He won the Golden Satellite Awards for Best Supporting Actor and Best Supporting Male in the Independent Spirit Awards. And he also won Best Supporting Actor, the Los Angeles Film Critics Association Awards. So it's fairly, highly awarded film. You would think, it'd be easier to find.
True. I agree.
Just like Mystery of the Wax Museum. I think Mystery of the Wax Museum is a better film than this one, personally. But they're both good enough that they should be readily available on some streaming service, right?
You would think.
And they may be on some we don't have, I guess, but it just makes me wonder. Why, Karen? Why?
Why? Yeah, you'd think they'd want to make money off of it.
Think.
Come on, Amazon. What's your problem?
All right, Karen, what'd you think of the Hpnotiq Margarita?
The cocktail that had nothing to do with
film?
movie. It's excellent.
That's pretty good. It's a little too tequila-y for me, but I know you like your tequila, Karen.
I do. It's a sweet drink, which is also something that I like. But
Yeah,
it's fruity.
Tequila cuts through it, though. I can still taste it, but not overly. But
if you put in an ounce instead of an ounce and a half, I think you'd like it more, maybe.
Probably would.
I think it's cool looking. It's cool color. It's fun.
Anything we learned today, Karen?
We learned about method acting. Stanislavsky. You did a Star Wars reference at the very beginning, but you probably cut that out. Pretty funny, though. We learned about Pekingese dogs.
I did make a Star Wars reference, though, didn't I? Come to the dark side.
Oh, come to the dark side.
About how you're never been mad at me yet.
We learned about Karen, depending on how you say it, who leads you across the river. Pekingese dogs. Did I say that already?
Mm-hmm. No, Pekingese dogs. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anything else we learned?
I don't think so.
Well, I just went through a list of the awards William Dafoe won and was nominated for, but other than that. All right. Upcoming next week's film and cocktail, Karen.
It's all you. What do you got?
Oh, is it me this week? Is it my turn finally?
Finally.
All right, Karen, the film I have chosen for next week is it's a Hammer film, Karen.
Oh my God.
I know you're so
Why are you stuck
surprised
on the Hammer films? We're going to see their whole catalog, aren't we?
That is my goal, Karen.
I don't hate the Hammer films. It's just funny that he keeps picking them. It's not, I don't not enjoy them. My reaction was overly dramatic there.
I recently did create a spreadsheet with every Hammer horror film, Karen, and I'm marking them off one by one.
Excellent.
But the film we're going to enjoy next week, Karen, we're going to enjoy this film called The Two Faces of Dr. Jekyll, as it was released in the UK. In the US, it is known as House of Fright.
Do you have a drink to go with this movie?
I do, Karen.
Ooh, what is it?
It is called the Sweet Poison Cocktail.
Does it have something to do with the movie?
Funny you should ask, Karen.
It's not a requirement,
It is a drink that is a house drink or signature drink at the Jekyll and Hyde Club in Greenwich Village, New York.
Excellent.
The Sweet Poison Cocktail. We're going to need light rum, coconut rum, blue curacao, a handful of ice, pineapple juice, and if you so desire, a pineapple wedge for garnish.
That sounds very familiar.
Anyone you need to thank this week, Karen?
Well, Greg, I'd like to thank our listener.
our friends and listeners.
There's a lot of podcasts out there. Thank you for spending time with us. Who would you like to thank?
Karen, I need to once again thank the band Verse 13 for providing all the music in the Scary Spirits podcast.
The music definitely makes the podcast better.
And friends and listeners out there, if you've seen Shadow of the Vampire and agree with me that it's 3.5.
2.5.
2.5.
Don't downgrade my movie.
Or you agree with Karen that it's a 2.
They're a team Karen.
Keeping in mind that the less cocktails, the better the film, let us know. Send us a message from our website on the contact us link.
No, just email greg@scaryspirits.com and tell him he's wrong.
Or
Just say-
Karen@scaryspirits.com and tell her she is a little misguided.
Well, that's true. So
Or go to our website and sign up for our newsletter, and you'll get all kinds of information about what films are coming up and lots of trivia and maybe even a drink recipe or two.
if you can't go to our website and check out the recipe den.
True.
If you're not going to the recipe den, we're just going to put it in your email box.
But that's all we'll put in your box, Karen.
Yes.
No spam.
Nope, we won't sell it.
Anything else, Karen?
Please drink responsibly.
Yes.
Thanks for listening to the Scary Spirits podcast, where the movies might be iffy, but the drinks are always solid. We would love to hear from you. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at Scary Spirits Podcast, or go to our website, scaryspirits.com. And if you want the direct line, email us at info@scaryspirits.com. If you really want to help us out, leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. And remember, always drink responsibly. See you next week.